The old adage goes that when racing in wet weather and mixed conditions, it's driver quality that comes to the fore, and it has to be said that what we saw in Canada, to rip off another YouTuber, was a delectable medley of racing splendor. Canada did not disappoint, with mixed conditions at the circuit yet again delivering an action-packed race steeped in close calls, drama, and absolute chaos. It truly seemed to be a field split in two. The top half of the field saw the pinnacle at the pinnacle of motorsport, while the bottom half saw their races crumble and implode to seal off weekends that were already disappointing before the race even started. If you told us on Thursday that Ferrari would double DNF, Alpine would get double points, and that Perez wouldn't even see the checkered flag, never mind the top 10, then well, maybe we'd believe the last one. It's been such a mixed bag that it's hard to know where to start, but one thing is for sure, Ferrari did themselves no favors both in the championships as well as convincing anyone that they no longer bring their clown paint to the track. Want to know how the Canadian Grand Prix unfolded? You couldn't blame us if the runtime of this video was as long as the race itself, but we'll do our best to keep it brief. And stick around because Ferrari gave us a throwback race like no other, but not in the way they would have wanted, and the drivers are fuming. What a race! Let's take it from the top. Everyone survived Turn 1 in treacherous conditions, with the drivers crawling off the line in as much of a fight for survival as with each other. The McLarens played a patience game over the first stint and became a terrifying prospect as the race approached 1/3 distance. The McLaren was rapid as the drying line started to appear, and with tyres that had been better cared for, Norris looked to be a contender for first place with Verstappen and Russell. While he would go on to take the second step of the podium, Norris truly showed his quality in mixed conditions today. Multiple safety cars, both summoned by the Williams-related instance, one as a victim and another as a Beyblade, threw even more chaos into the mix, prompting the entire race to be a tense affair that felt like it went on for a lifetime in the best way possible. The Mercedes drivers, despite throwing out their elbows at each other in the closing stages, put together a solid points haul, presenting plenty of arguments about whether their impressive display was down to just how individual of a track Canada is, or whether they have actually turned a corner and can look to close the gap on those above them. Alpine and Aston Martin took away some nice points from the race to make the most of the chaos in a race where some of their rivals fell away. Daniel Ricciardo had a solid showing after facing some pretty sharp criticism, and while he couldn't keep his V-carb in front of the Astons, he beat his teammate and took home a decent points haul from a steady weekend he desperately needed. Max took the top step after an incredibly impressive drive at a circuit that really didn't suit the Red Bull car. The fact that everyone had to stay off the curbs did level the playing field somewhat, as that is the element where Red Bull would have struggled the most. But even still, the rift at Red Bull is currently catastrophic in regards to their constructors' hopes. Sergio Perez capped off a weekend that, had it come before his recent signing, could have put some scrutiny on the 2 years extension he signed last week with the team. Speaking of catastrophes, we'll get on to Ferrari later. At the end of the day, what won Verstappen the race was the fact that Russell and Norris did not keep it as tidy as the current champion. Nobody on that podium drove a bad race, but at the same time, both Lando and George were unable to keep it clean at crucial points. Don't get me wrong, if the timing worked out just seconds better on the safety car, then it's hard to see Norris not claiming his second win of his career and of the season, but Verstappen kept it steady for those final 10 laps when he needed to most. Now then, Ferrari. What the hell happened? Going from the highs of Monaco to the lowest that we've seen Ferrari in quite some time is the kind of switch-up that could give you whiplash. Technical issues, strategic blunders, and absolutely eye-roll-worthy radio messages could serve as a montage of Ferrari of yesteryear, something that we were told, and indeed believed, was now to be a thing of the past. It all started on Saturday, as it seemed that the form and nuance of the week before had abandoned them completely, with neither car making it out of Q2. While it did seem that they were struggling for power on the straights, which took them by surprise it's fair to say, Ferrari seemed to shoot themselves in the feet by sending both drivers out on used soft, while they still had fresh softs remaining in the garage. Whether ill-informed hubris or genuine belief that they could have made it, an electric Alex Albon put end to any hopes of a Q3 appearance for the Scuderia. Even going into the race, we still held out some hope for Ferrari that they'd be able to at least push on and clear the midfield chaff in front of them. But but they never really got started even in conditions that leveled the playing field. It was within the opening stint that a sour revelation came across Charles's radio. He was losing time and there was nothing he could do about it outside of managing the issue. Charles had to press pretty firmly to even get an answer as to just how much time he was losing, and it was clear that he was devastated by the news. After first reporting the issue on lap 5, it only got worse as the race went on, and following his retirement from the race, a completely dejected Charles had this to say about his frustrating outing following his hometown victory last time out. I was losing 1.2 seconds on the straights, which was extremely annoying already, and then on top of that, I had 10 different changes per lap on the engine switch, which was such a frustrating race because you just get passed by everyone on the straights. In the corners you are fast, and actually I think the pace was quite strong at the beginning. Considering the engine issues, there was nothing we could have done to do better. It seemed that the issue had been somewhat resolved after a lengthy pit stop, which compounded Charles's woes with him being left out on hard tyres of all things as the heavens once again opened up. However, whether from the realization that the race was a lost cause or the fact that the issue had in fact not been fully resolved, Leclerc would retire from the race. Leclerc would go on to say just how much the weekend took them by surprise. I think we were expecting to be in the mix, which was a surprise when we arrived in qualifying as it wasn't the case. Obviously the main issue today was the engine and we have to really look at it, but all in all it's been a frustrating weekend. Not really the pace we were expecting in qualifying, and the engine issue in the race we couldn't come back from. The only saving grace for Ferrari was that, unlike a few cars on the field, Charles's car didn't take a new engine into this race. This leaves the door open for the team to do so moving into Barcelona. However, it is yet to be seen if this is an issue specific to the engine currently in Charles's car, or if we could see future technical issues at the back end of Ferrari engine cycles in the future. For Leclerc, however, I doubt he'll see much for saving grace at all, as seeing those blue flags must have been pretty painful. It wasn't only the technical woes that left Ferrari toothless in Canada, as the strategy department had a pretty dismal weekend to boot. In a weekend where timings and strategy decisions were all important for the field, the aforementioned qualifying blunder and the perplexing decision to put Charles on slicks in the face of an oncoming downpour only rubbed salt into the wounds of already having a tricky weekend. Yes, taking a risk and going for an unexpected strategy gamble has its perks. I mean, just ask the Haas drivers about the first 10 laps. However, when both car and driver were already experiencing a pretty rancid state of affairs, the last thing that would improve morale would be a car sticking out of the wall of champions because it lost it into the final chicane. Being told, just survive 2 laps of rain and then you'll be fast, could have been believed if it wasn't a cold, damp day and if he wasn't being sent out on hard tyres. Martin Brundle would say just how screwed Leclerc was at the whims of Ferrari's baffling decision, as even he saw how the events would unfold. Yeah, but this is hopeless. The slower you go, the less grip you've got. The less grip you've got, the slower you go, and then you're in a horrible snowball effect like that. Carlos Sainz's race was entirely blunted too, as he was looking unlikely to threaten the points positions, fighting down with the Haas's and Williams cars, something which he may need to get used to. His weekend, while already reflecting badly on the team and their inability to create a competitive package for the mixed conditions and the track layout, ended in a whimper as he pushed just a touch too hard, losing control of his car and collecting Alex Albon in his wake. So while I said that the only saving grace for Ferrari was the fact that this wasn't a new engine, it wasn't all that accurate upon reflection. While this weekend could have seen Red Bull move away by as much as 44 points, they only moved away by 25, after one half of their rival's garage failed to capitalize on the woes of the Scuderia. It's not like Ferrari are now out of reach and are in a season-defining rut. However, it is imperative for Ferrari to make sure that they do not repeat this embarrassing weekend, or else they may fall foul of the same bad habits that have rendered them a paper tiger in years gone by.